Good morning. I have just been briefed by officials and agency representatives, and I can provide you all with the following update. A total now of 49 people have been killed. Work is underway to confirm their identities as quickly as possible. 41 people died at Deans Avenue Mosque, 7 at the Linwood Avenue Mosque, and 1 person has since died in hospital. Over 40 people are being treated for injuries at Christchurch Hospital. They have all been identified, and those names have been shared with members of the community. 2 of those are in critical condition. And also, a 5-year-old child has been transported today to Starship Hospital in Auckland. This is the only transfer that has taken place. I am advised that the hospital is well equipped and coping well. There are available beds and 7 acute theatres for those in need. Pathologists from throughout the country have made themselves available, and we have additional pathologists coming in from Australia. 3 people have been arrested in relation to this event. 1 Australian citizen will appear in court today, charged with murder. This individual has travelled around the world, with sporadic periods of time spent in New Zealand. They were not a resident of Christchurch. In fact, they were currently based in Dunedin at the time of this event. Inquiries are ongoing to establish whether the other 2 who were arrested were directly involved with this incident. The 4th person who was arrested yesterday was a member of the public who was in possession of a firearm, but with the intention of assisting police. They have since been released. Police are working to build a picture of anyone who might be involved and all of their activities prior to this event. None of those apprehended had a criminal history either here or in Australia. And as I said last night, they were not on any watch lists either here or in Australia. I want to be very clear, though, that our intelligence community and police are focused on extremism of every kind. Given global indicators around far-right extremism, our intelligence community has been stepping up their investigations in this area. The individual charged with murder had not come to the attention of the intelligence community, nor the police, for extremism. I have asked our agencies this morning to work swiftly on assessing whether there was any activity on social media or otherwise that should have triggered a response. That work is already underway. Today, as the country grieves, we are seeking answers. I want to speak specifically about the firearms used in this terrorist act. I'm advised that there were 5 guns used by the primary perpetrator. There were 2 semi-automatic weapons and 2 shotguns. The offender was in possession of a gun licence. I'm advised that this was acquired in November of 2017. A lever-action firearm was also found. While work is being done as to the chain of events that led to both the holding of this gun licence and the possession of these weapons, I can tell you one thing right now: our gun laws will change. There have been attempts to change our laws in 2005, 2012, and after an inquiry in 2017. Now is the time for change. There are obviously questions being asked of how this person was able to enter the country and undertake this act of terror. I have instructed ODS to report to Cabinet on Monday on this sequence of events with a view to strengthening our systems on a range of fronts, including but not limited to firearms, border controls, enhanced information sharing with Australia, and any practical reinforcement of our watch list processes. I want to come now to what people can expect over the course of the day and beyond. The safety of New Zealanders is our highest priority. New Zealand Police remain on high alert. Christchurch residents are strongly urged to stay home if possible and stay safe. Please monitor the police website and social media for further information. If you see something suspicious, then please call 111 immediately. A number of events are being held across the country today, and there will be an increased police presence. Police have additional patrols out on the streets of Christchurch to reassure the community. They have flown in 45 additional police staff to Christchurch, with a further 80 staff arriving today. The additional police staffing includes public safety teams, detectives, tactical specialists and intelligence support. Staff from other DHBs have offered support as required. There will be additional support provided in Christchurch for mental health and psychosocial needs. If anyone needs to speak to someone or if they're feeling distressed in any way, I encourage you to call or text 1737. There are extra staff available. That number to call or text again is 1737, and that line is available to anyone, whether they've been directly involved in these incidents, whether they're residents or Christchurch or not, anyone in New Zealand who's feeling any kind of distress. The police are aware of distressing material relating to this event being online and are reminding people it is an offence to distribute objectionable material. I want to touch briefly on activity to date and the response that occurred yesterday. So just to recap, police immediately secured the areas involved and ensured that people were kept safe, including schools and offices being locked down. Police made arrests swiftly, and as I've said, a man will appear in court this morning. Defence specialists quickly moved to assist police to make the improvised explosive devices safe. I want to make special mention of those who are involved in both the parts of the operation involving disarming explosive devices, but also undertaking the arrests themselves. Many of you may have seen the footage of the arrests, and I can only describe it as an act of bravery on behalf of all New Zealanders, and an act that showed very little regard for their own personal safety. I'm sure everyone in New Zealand wants the acknowledgement of the police, but particularly the police officer who made that critical arrest yesterday. I also want to acknowledge ambulance staff who many will have seen acting swiftly under horrific conditions, and all medical staff who continue to work with those who are injured. New Zealand Defence Force at Burnham Camp yesterday were put on standby to assist police in Christchurch. Mosques around the country were provided with advice from police to help keep them secure and advice to remain closed. This advice continues, as does the police presence at mosques around the country. The national threat level was raised to high, and that remains. This triggers a number of actions to help keep people safe, such as increased aviation and border security. A number of specialist family liaison staff were deployed. Close liaison has been established with the Muslim community and other key people in Christchurch. Police and the wider government will be working with leaders and members of the Islamic community to provide assistance, reassurance and support. An 0800 number established to register missing persons, 0800 115019, and a website, Restoring Family Links. MFAT are acting as a liaison point for foreign governments. Consular representation for any foreign nations involved is being provided. At this stage, we understand those involved include Pakistan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Bangladesh, Indonesia and Malaysia. MFAT staff are dealing with offers of assistance and, of course, receiving a significant number of condolence messages. Deputy Commissioner Māori and Ethnic Services Wally Homaha has travelled to Christchurch alongside 15 additional ethnic liaison officers to support the community. These specialists will work alongside local staff to support the families involved. They are assisting to repatriate them with their loved ones in a way that is consistent with Muslim beliefs, or taking into account these particular circumstances and obligations to the coroner. I want to finish by saying that while the nation grapples with a form of grief and anger that we have not experienced before, we are seeking answers. After this media conference, I will board a Defence Force plane and travel to Christchurch. I will have other political leaders with me, including the Leader of the Opposition. As is the entire nation, we are all unified in grieving together.
Minister, specifically, what changes would you like to see to the gun laws? Where did they fail?
Well, obviously, as I've said, that's a chain of events that we are currently analysing. But the mere fact, when people, of course, hear that this individual was acquired a gun licence and acquired weapons of that range, then obviously I think people will be seeking change, and I'm committing to that.
And also travelled to Pakistan after obtaining that gun licence and returning to New Zealand. The more we learn about this person, the harder it is to understand why he wasn't on the radar of our intelligence agencies. Was there a failure of our intelligence agencies?
Again, I reiterate that this individual was not on the radar of either Australian intelligence agencies or New Zealand intelligence agencies. Yes, he'd travelled to a range of countries, sporadically been in and out of New Zealand for periods of time, but I've asked on Monday to reconvene all those agencies who will be able to piece together the nature of that travel, the sequence of events in terms of obtaining gun licences, and then shortly thereafter, the gun licence was obtained in November 2017. The purchasing of weapons began in December 2017. So obviously a sequence and chain of events there that began some time ago, but those are all issues that we are seeking answers around.
Are there any white supremacists on our terror watch list, or have we been too focused on Islamic extremists?
As I've said, that given the rise of extremist views by those who hold ideology that I can only describe as violent and extreme, our agencies here in New Zealand have stepped up the work that was being done in that area. But again, that did not result in this individual being on any kind of watch list.
How concerned are you about rhetoric around the Global Migration Compact? How concerned are you that that has fueled?
If you look at my comments at the time, I have always been concerned about that kind of rhetoric, but everyone should be. Rhetoric of racism, division, extremism has no place not only in New Zealand, but I would say in a society as a whole.
Did the attacker hold the...
What message do you have to the community members who might be angry and who might be thinking about retaliation or other such actions?
I don't think that is in keeping with their values. I know that they have questions. Those are questions that we are directly asking agencies. We are all working together to get those answers as quickly as we can. And as I said in my opening statements, if there was any suggestion that these individuals should have been known to us, we are looking into that as we speak. Our duty was to keep everyone who is in New Zealand and calls New Zealand home safe. That has not occurred here, so questions must be answered.
Did the attacker hold the correct category of gun licence for the firearms he used in the attack?
That is my understanding.
That seems to be an incredibly high threshold, or a specialised category. So how is it that he could get a licence like that for semi-automatic weapons?
My understanding is he held a Category A gun licence, and again, I preface this that my advice currently is that he, under that gun licence, was able to legally acquire the guns that he held. That will give you an indication of why we need to change our gun laws.
Tell about your conversation with Donald.
Sorry, Benedict.
Would you like to see semi-automatic weapons banned?
That's certainly one of the issues that I'm looking at with immediate effect. I've asked for advice yesterday on all of these questions.
Do you consider a buyback program like in Australia?
Again, a bit too early for me to say at this point. But again, as soon as New Zealanders hear that someone was legally able to acquire, as I'm advised, those weapons and carry out this event, that will raise enormous questions with our gun laws, and that is why we will respond swiftly.
What about guns? Should they be licensed? Most guns aren't licensed.
Again, these are all issues that I'm looking at as quickly as I can.
And can you confirm that you believe a single shooter was responsible for both attacks?
Look, as I've indicated, obviously we've had a total of 3 arrests in direct relation to this event. One person at this point has been charged and is appearing in court. With the remaining 2, police are still undertaking investigations in order to try and ascertain whether they were directly involved. So obviously there is a primary focus here.
Relating to residents of Christchurch and New Zealand citizens?
At this stage, I'll keep that information with agencies and authorities because, as I'm indicating, they are still trying to ascertain their level of involvement with this incident. At the moment, we do very much have a primary perpetrator.
So is it expected that any charges will be laid under the Terrorism Suppression Act?
At this stage, a murder charge has been laid. I wouldn't want to speculate on anything further that may happen in that regard. Those are operational matters.
President Trump tell you this morning in your front?
Yes, I do want to acknowledge I have received messages of condolence from around the world. Many have come via MFAT, but some have come to me directly, including Federica Mogherini, Pedro Sanchez from Spain, Franz Timmermans, Bill Shorten, obviously PM Scott Morrison, Theresa May, and also I spoke with Donald Trump this morning. He sought to call us directly. He very much wished for his condolences to be passed on to New Zealand. He asked what offer of support the United States could provide. My message was sympathy and love for all Muslim communities.
So what's the most burning question that you'd like answered out of all this?
I've highlighted some of those in my opening statements, very much whether or not there was any indication, including on social media, that this individual should have been responded to earlier. I've asked for immediate follow-up on some of the concerns that I've heard reported by members of our Muslim community around their safety concerns in the weeks prior. I've asked for immediate response to that, and obviously our gun laws.
Was President Trump aware that the suspect saw him as the symbol of renewed white identity?
That was not discussed. He only conveyed his absolute horror and disdain for what had occurred here.
Reason that you made such a pointed message to him that you wanted sympathy and love for Muslim communities?
He asked what he could do, and I simply conveyed, I think, the sentiment that exists here within New Zealand.
What was his response to you saying you wanted sympathy and love for Muslims?
He acknowledged that and agreed.
President Trump said in the Oval Office a few minutes ago that he did not think white supremacy worldwide was a problem that was rising in any way. Do you agree with him?
No.
Now, some of the people in the mosque said that the emergency response was slow. What's your advice on that?
Look, certainly indications I've had is that our people on the ground have done everything that they could under difficult circumstances as quickly as they could. Of course, there is always a time for reflection. We need to ensure that whilst we are managing the ongoing acute situation on the ground, we will take that time for reflection to see whether or not the response was what it needed to be at the time. But for those who have been involved, I do want to pass on still New Zealand's gratitude.
How quickly could we see changes to our gun laws and perhaps that ban on semi-automatic weapons?
Of course, at the moment we are still in the middle of an operation, a very active operation, and so I do need to allow the police to continue that work. So I've deployed our policy people here in Wellington to start undertaking that work. Obviously, I see some urgency to that, but I can't give you a timeline at this point in time. I see it as an issue of the utmost urgency, though.
Do you know whether it would require legislation or could it be managed through changes to regulations?
I can't give you a definitive answer on that. I wouldn't be surprised at this stage if it would require a legislative change, though.
Do you think Could be other changes in New Zealand, for instance, regional flights having security or police wearing firearms?
At this, of course, there are elements of the way that we undertake our work here in New Zealand that I think New Zealanders would want us to do everything we can to preserve. Because of our heightened security response at the moment, we are still at high. We will be, of course, seeing a difference in border response. I cannot tell you at this stage whether that would be ongoing.
Do you know how you've advised Christchurch citizens in particular?
Do I just want to check, is there a need for those who are travelling with us to Christchurch to depart now? Is that the advice? Yes. Look, anyone who's not travelling to Christchurch, I'm happy to stay and answer further questions. For those who are travelling with us, please feel free to depart.
You've expressed that people in Christchurch should stay home and stay safe. That suggests that there are obviously still quite a few unknowns. Can you speak to the level of unknowns?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge again, as was the case last night, whilst we have no reason to necessarily believe that there are others who need to be apprehended at this stage, we don't want to take that for granted. That is why there are additional police officers on the ground in Christchurch. We've deployed extra tactical people and intelligence officers. We'll be working to ascertain that as soon as possible. So my message is simply, we are maintaining vigilance. That's in order to ensure the security and safety of New Zealanders, which is our top priority. New Zealand Police will be providing advice on an ongoing basis if, of course, that status changes.
What about and both CNN reported this morning that in New York and in London, out of response to this attack, they've put more security around their mosques. Is there, a fear here as well that there might be just further threat inspired by this?
Look, I think that's a natural response. Obviously, that's up into their own agencies as to how they respond. But given what we have experienced here, I utterly understand those additional security measures. What we'll be doing is working as hard as we can to give assurances, particularly to our Muslim community, as quickly as we can. In the meantime, police are present to secure their safety and ensure their safety.
Does the government have any estimate of how many guns like those semi-automatic weapons actually are in New Zealand?
They have an idea of the total number of guns, absolutely. I can't give you specifics at the moment around the individual categories of guns, but of course we licence firearms in New Zealand.
Where did he get his gun licence?
Here in New Zealand? Unfortunately, Audrey, I cannot answer that specific question.
Or citizenship?
No, not citizenship. He's an Australian citizen. Of course, as an Australian citizen, at the border, he is given the status to be able to reside in New Zealand. That happens when any Australian enters into New Zealand.
The same basis as any New Zealander could in terms of the application for that licence?
That is my understanding. But of course, this is additional detail that I'm seeking.
He said he planned and trained here
Yes.
in New Zealand. Do you have any information?
I've asked questions around that and some of the other claims that he's made about his experience and status. I do not have any further information on that at this stage, but those are questions I have asked.
Was he employed in Dunedin? Do we have any details of where he was living down there?
We do have details of where he is living. That is a property that the police are working to secure. Obviously, there is a concern around explosive devices, so they have evacuated individuals in the immediate vicinity of that home. Again, I want to reiterate, this was an individual who travelled sporadically into New Zealand, who stayed for periods of time. I would not describe, from what I've seen of their history and movements, I would not describe them as someone who was a fixed-term resident here.
He first arrived.
Deported into Australia.
Sorry, what was
Will you
that?
seek to see him deported into Australia?
Again, that is an issue I'm seeking further advice on. Obviously, we will want to ensure that this individual faces the charges against them here in New Zealand in the first instance.
You said he sporadically came in and out of the country. When did he first arrive?
Some years ago, but for, as I understand, a very short period of time. Again, the periods of time here in New Zealand have been of varying lengths, but it's nothing that I would describe as long-term or domiciled here by any stretch. This is someone who, for all intents and purposes, I would describe as an Australian citizen who travelled internationally and periodically spent time here in New Zealand.
Name any of the other countries he visited?
Not at this stage.
Prime Minister, you say that inquiries are being made about whether this person could serve his time in Australia.
No, that's not the nature of my. I'm seeking further advice on the aftermath of him going through the New Zealand justice system.
Vigils around the country, is it wise for people to be gathering in big numbers? What's the advice there?
Look, people will want to be able to display their grief, and rightly so. This is the way that New Zealand responds, and I don't think there's any intention for agencies to stand in the way of that. We will look to facilitate national services. At the moment, though, our focus is on ensuring that, first and foremost, family members and members of the community can do that with their loved ones, and sometime thereafter we'll look for national memorials. I'll take this as a last question, if you don't mind.
Will you be seeking more detailed information, in the coming sort of weeks and months, about whether over a longer period of time the security services have perhaps taken their eye off the ball with regard to white extremism and focused too much on Islamic terrorism?
Again, as I say, given the rise of extremism, extreme right extremism, our security and intelligence services had increased their work in that area. But even then, this particular individual, as I say, was not known to our intelligence agencies and was not on any kind of watch list. So that obviously means there are questions that we'll be looking for answers on. All right, thank you, everyone. I'll be happy to answer questions again once I'm in Christchurch, and we'll look to give it a schedule of any further stand-ups later in the day.